So we're going to go ahead and get started. The title of our Lunch and Learn today is Making Assessment Memorable. We do have the links there on the slide, and Erica's also adding the links for us as well.
Sorry.
So my name is Kurt Hurlbrink. I'm one of the DLCs that serves in the central area.
My name is Elizabeth Adams, and I am one of the DLCs in the eastern area.
So today's session, we always like to highlight which of the digital learning standards we're kind of focused on. The great thing with today's session is it really hits all of them, but we decided to narrow it down to creative communicator and innovative designer. And I believe that links out as well to those standards. So.
Yes.
So today what we're going to do is we're just going to discover some ways to assess with a maker mindset. And then we will give you some time to actually explore all of the resources that are available to you.
All right. So an activity that we have, if you guys would like to do this activity kind of while we go through the slides, you can, but this one is called a personal portrait. And it's just gathering different items if you're at home or, in your classroom, just different items that you can create a portrait that represents you. So you are welcome to do this activity while we are going through our slides if you'd like. This is an activity that you could do with your students. You can turn this into an assessment piece, so they could use materials to create a storybook character or a historical figure or represent a mathematical concept. Also links to slides where if you do this activity and you want to upload your personal portrait, you can upload it to the slides that are linked here. And also just use the slides as an example of how you could have your students show their personal portrait or representation, that kind of thing.
So we always like to start with a quote. And today we chose this one, so I'll give you just a second to read that. But what that's going to do is just get us all into the right mindset to think about what it is we want our kids to be able to do and what skills are actually going to be important for them as they venture out into the real world. So a lot of times we get the question, well, why would we assess in Makerspace? It's supposed to be something fun. We shouldn't put that kind of pressure on the kids, etc. But there's a lot of reasons why you would want to do that. First of all, when we work with kids, the whole point of assessing them is to give them feedback. They need to understand what it is that they're doing well and areas that they need to work in. But what we really like about Makerspace, and when we think about assessment in Makerspace, is the fact that Maker gives us a chance to assess the kids in the 4 C's, right? To look at those skills that are tough to look at in the classroom setting, but in a Makerspace, it just lends itself to it. So along those same lines, it also gives us a chance, some of those standards that are really tough to assess in a classroom are pretty easy to do in a Makerspace. And it gives the kids a chance to show what they know. We provide agency for them and give them a chance to really show that they understand a concept without being forced to do it with paper and pencil.
The first ideas that we're going to go through are some ELA ideas. And when we think about assessments in ELA, your typical assessments are writing assessments or describing, whether it's a full paper at the high school level or a paragraph in the elementary level or just a few sentences, it's still most of the time the way we assess an ELA is through writing. And that may not be all of our students' strengths. So they may understand the story, they may understand the themes and the character traits and all that. So coming up with ideas of or creative ways of how they can show us understanding and using that creativity that they have. So here are two different links to ELA lessons. This symbolism and imagery maker assessments is one that is using Makerspace in English and humanities. So one of the examples in here is having them create an object. You can see some pictures here that maybe is to truly show symbolism, truly show a character. So again, back to that personal portrait of developing that character. So this is has some good articles. This one also talks about printing the symbol. So if you do have a 3D printer, that students could create their symbol in Tinkercad and then print it out on a 3D printer, or you could just use consumable materials, just depending on what you have available in your school. The other link is using the Sphero robot, and it's a lesson where you would have the students use the robot to be that character in the book and show personality and emotions and kind of journey through the story. Again, if Spheros are not something that is available in your school, then you could have them just draw the character and build the character out of consumable materials to show the different personalities. The next ELA we have is we have developed creative ways to take the performance task for modules 2, 3, and 4. We will be working on module 1 soon, but these are, so it's the same performance task that the students do for all the EL modules. It's not changed, they will still complete it as written. It's just the product is a little bit different. So if I click on module 3, it's going to hopefully open up and you will see, sorry that was kind of slow, but you can go to your grade level and go, it will, so let's say your 3rd grade, if you click on it will lead you to the slide. You will see 3 different options of ideas of how you could change the performance task a little bit. Some will be using technology, some might be using a robot, but again, some might be using just consumable materials. So you have the different options, and then you'll also see where there's been one option that's broken out into steps of how you could do that option. So those are for grades 2 through 8. And like I said, we have completed modules 2 and 3. 4 is linked there, and we are in the working on that one, and module 1 should be ready at the beginning of the school year.
Awesome. Also, as you think about all of these different activities, keep in mind we're giving you just one example of how to use it. So like what Elizabeth just shared, the performance tasks, you may read a task and it talks about using a dash robot. You may not have a dash robot, but how could you tweak that to give the kids that creative option of performing the same task? So feel free to make it work for you. So our next section is on student choice. So one of the ways we can assess our kids is by giving them some choice. So the first one is choice boards, and I'm sure you've all heard of a choice board. I've got a few examples here that I'll show you what we're talking about. So here's one for figurative language. So it's just a tic-tac-toe board. And in this case, the kids then have 9 different options. And they choose which one they want to complete. Now, what I like about this is that the teacher has given it an online and an offline option. So this is something that they used during COVID, so that when they had kids at home, the kids at home could also complete the activity. It just may look a little different than what the kids that were live in person were completing. The other thing I've seen is that sometimes they may highlight like this box 5, and they may have an activity that every child has to complete, and then they get to choose one of the others. So that's an option as well. Another example here, the reading response. Very similar, but in this case, what the teacher has done is listed different tools that the kids could use. Okay, and when you see something like this, typically what the teacher does is the tool always stays the same. It's just what the activity is that they switch up the directions for. Oops. And then one more here, the science review. So here, they've got different activities. And again, they're all as a choice board, which just looks like the tic-tac-toe board. So lots of different ideas. And again, these are all just because they're a certain grade level doesn't mean that you can't make it work for you. Here's an example of what I was talking about where the tool may stay the same. So here they've got different tools and the kids, the activity would actually change. The same with this one. This is a show what you know board. This is one that I have used in the past. So here, the tools were always there. I just updated in the center what the directions were. And then the other thing that you could do here is where it says turn in your project, you could actually link that to a folder out in your drive so that when I do my Google presentation, I can just share the link out into that folder. Okay.
And we also have some rubrics because we want to think about when we do have our students complete projects or changing up that assessment, how we're going to grade it or to see how well they performed or to make sure that they do understand, even if we're not grading it. And then a lot of times we want students to kind of do a self-assessment, especially in the makerspace, because a lot of makerspace activities are collaborative group work. And so you want to make sure that the students feel that they're doing their part for their team, but the other members are also doing their part. So we've linked a couple of rubrics. You'll see some 4Cs rubrics. So there's a creativity rubric, a critical thinking rubric, and a communication rubric. There's some project rubrics here and programming rubrics. Again, you can adapt any of these rubrics to fit your assessment or fit the project that you're having the students do. The programming rubrics are specific to certain robots, but again, you can change that depending on what you are using. And it may not even be that you're using the robot, but you still, some of the parts of the rubric, you could still assess students to make sure they're doing. So these should link just to a bunch of different rubrics for you to explore. Then we also have some math ideas. Again, thinking about typical assessments for math, we have students solve problems or equations and show what they know. So how can we do that with creatively or just changing it up by building something? And so here we have what we call maker math. So these are 2 lessons that actually use Dash Robot, and they're different task cards on the geometry one. Jesslyn, my teammate, and I just did this one with a 3rd grade class when they finished learning area and perimeter. And we have to say that this one went really well with the students. They worked great together, and it was challenging enough, but yet also allowed them to show that they understand the basics of area and perimeter and that's what the teacher was trying to accomplish. And so she did this kind of, like I said, at the end of the unit to see which students were understanding and maybe where she needed to back up and review. So these are different task cards, and that's just something you can explore. And the other one is a 5th grade lesson using Dash. Again, you may not have these robots available in your school. And if that's the case, you can still take these task cards like the geometry with Dash and a lot of it with the perimeter was building the shape using masking tape or drawing the shape and measuring. So, a lot of these activities you can adapt based on tools that you have available in your school.
So we do have a few other options here that we wanted to share. So this is a really cool one. We have a group of DLCs and that work on our maker team, and we actually facilitate a maker PLT. And two of our teammates found this challenge that we shared. And it's just a challenge matrix. Again, you could make a copy of this and make it fit, but what you do is list different materials the kids could use and then have them make a certain object or a certain, maybe make a character, and you might list all the different characters from a story and that character will do what. You can also maybe use this one. Here they've got the materials, they've got a place and a certain situation. And then we've also included just some blanks that you can then manipulate and fill in. You could certainly use all of the columns, all 5 if you wanted to, but you could also narrow it down to 2 or 3, just depending on what you want to assess. So anyway, we thought that was a pretty cool way, very generic. It would be easy to use and to adapt that for pretty much any unit that you're studying. And again, you kind of control what's in there, right? So if you want it to be all consumable, you could. You could also tweak it and make it all digital and give them options that way as well. So here's a project I just finished with some kindergarten and first graders. This is using Bbot. So we made these boards. This is just a plain poster board, divided up into squares. Then we bought stickers with letters, numbers. We cut out colored boxes. And then the kids had note cards in an envelope, right, that also matched all of the squares on the poster. And they drew out a card. And if it was the number 2, then they put the Bbot in the start space and they had to code him to go and stop on the number 2. Or it might have been the red box, or it could have been the letter. But after we did the project, we started talking and thinking, you could adapt this for other grade levels very easily. So you could have vocabulary words, right? And so maybe as the teacher, you project the definition, and on the board are the different words from your unit, and the kids would have to program something or mark something, however you want to do it, to show that they understand what word that is. You could do pictures if you were studying something in science or social studies, maybe. I was thinking in social studies, the three regions of North Carolina, you could have images from the different regions and then flash up a description, and the kids have to program something to actually find that image on the poster. We also just included some generic links. A lot of your schools we know have Makey Makey. That's a great way to assess kids. So that link will take you out to the Makey site and you can get some ideas there. The same thing with Sphero. If you have Sphero, we've seen some pretty cool projects using Sphero as well. And then don't forget good old paper and pencil. So we've highlighted a lot of the digital tools, but don't forget you've got consumables there too. I will never forget, I did the digital choice board that I shared earlier with my kids. And one time, one of the options was make a poster. And I think all but one kid chose make a poster. It was like they were done with all the tech. They really just wanted to color a picture and, print out some facts and do that kind of stuff. But this was from a middle school social studies teacher. And I linked out to his blog. It's actually a pretty cool article because he did this as his unit assessment, but the kids did it in groups. So he was able to assess not just their content knowledge, but also how they worked as a team. So he was looking at their collaboration skills, their communication skills, et cetera. So he was kind of able to assess, kind of a double whammy there, get them both just through this one project. And then this slide, so we had a chance, I know Elizabeth and I, Erica's on the call, she was with us. We went to a Makerspace, Maker Ed conference in Pittsburgh. And this was a session I attended called Beyond Rubrics. And what I liked about it is if you scroll down here, all of these link out. So if you're just getting started, or even if you're experienced, there are so many resources in this session that they shared. I think the approach one, yeah. So here, these all link out, and these all have great ideas as well. So you can definitely use that. They've got some downloads, they've got some different tools, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of background information here that can help you get started. So if you're like, I just don't even know where to begin, you could read through some of this, get some great ideas. Or maybe you're experienced with it, but you're thinking, you know what, I just want to kind of refresh. I need to go back and just kind of think about. But they dig into the assessment principle and why they might assess in a makerspace and how they do it. So there's just a lot of great content there. So feel free to use that as well.
We do thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you have found some resources. And like I said, we just want to give you ideas of how to change up assessments a little bit and trying to get into that maker mindset of having students create and build and innovate. We are available. Feel free to reach out to us. We can help you plan, design, support.
And I think Erica threw the link in as well for your DLCs just out to our website. So if you know your DLC or whatever, you can reach out to them as well, and they can put you in contact with us that way as well. But if you have any questions, you are free to unmute and ask. Following sort of our new style of lunch and learn, the last 15 minutes or so, we typically give you time just to explore. So you feel free to go through that presentation. Feel free to click on all those links, see what's out there. If you're looking at something and you have a question, please feel free to unmute and ask, and we will sit on the call here for the next few minutes while you get a chance to explore. And we certainly thank you for joining us today.